Hey everyone, welcome to MIMS. Make it make sense. This is, first, I'm your host, Erika Washington, the Executive Director of Make It Work Nevada and Make It Work Nevada Education Fund, and also the host of MIMS. Um, I am ready to announce that this is actually going to be our last episode of MIMS. We've been doing this for a number of years now through various iterations, starting with Quentin as our original host and then moving on and doing some other things. And I think everything runs its course, and I think MIMS has run its course. And we've done a lot of really cool things, especially starting out not really even knowing what Make It Make Sense was about. It was just really about having a space to talk to folks about the pandemic and to talk to our elected officials and other stakeholders about what was going on in Nevada, and especially in Las Vegas, and especially during the panini. But now, I think it's time we do something new. So we're cooking up some new ideas for some new shows with some new interviews. Like, I really want to get back to my journalism roots and bring y'all some really dope, heavy hitting stuff in the future here. So in the meantime, we have a great show today. I got an opportunity to sit down with Assemblywoman Shodnra Summers-Armstrong from Assembly District 6, which covers part of Las Vegas and a little bit of North Las Vegas. And we also had a chance to talk to Jollina, who works on some of our grants and our policy work here, about the work she did in our legislative session in 2023. So, hope you enjoyed the show. And this is not goodbye forever, but it's goodbye for now. And we hope you enjoyed every episode of Make It Make Sense. Well, welcome to Make It Make Sense. I am Erika Washington, the Executive Director of Make It Work Nevada and your host. And I'm really excited. We're doing something a little bit different. As we said, this is going to be our actual last show of Make It Make Sense. And we're going to transition to something different and new because, it's almost 2024. We're going to try something a little different. But for our last show, we're actually having a live guest here in our office. One of our favorite people, Assemblywoman Shodnra Summers-Armstrong. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm so excited.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Health and Human Services Committee. My name is Shodnra Summers-Armstrong, and I'm the Assembly Representative for Nevada Assembly District 6. Today, we have quite the presentation for you on Assembly Bill 283, which seeks to increase funding and payment for birth doula services.
Session has now been over for, I guess, almost a month and a half, 2 months or so. How are you feeling?
Got a little rest, but also a bit tired because I have a 5-year-old grandbaby, and she's spending the summer with her Mimi, which is me, and Pop Pop, which is my husband, Carl. So trying to keep up with the baby is a lot. I was exhausted when I got home.
Oh, I bet so.
Yes.
I bet you are.
Yes.
Well, I think it's probably just as exhausting being in the legislature, but different. Tell us a little bit about, this was your second full term, your second full term and session in the Nevada legislature. How was this term different from your freshman?
I think I had a better understanding of what to expect. I was able to do some work in the interim, have meetings, do some advocacy, do some research, talk to the community a little bit more to be prepared for the session. I had no idea in 2021 how all of this worked. And not to say that I have a complete handle on it now, but I have a better understanding. And I think I went in a little bit more better prepared, had some thoughtful legislation that was presented, and had some successes. I think that we had a good session. As a whole. I wish that I had more bills that had gone through, but I think as a whole, the Democratic caucus presented some really good legislation with the community in mind. We just happened to be in a session where we had 75 vetoes. and that puts a damper on your enthusiasm, but it doesn't change the fact that we put forth good work and good legislation, and I'm happy about that.
Was it more difficult, or could you tell a difference between this session versus last session, knowing that we had a different governor last session, or your first session versus this last session? Was that more difficult for even thinking about what was possible, or did you go in it with the same sort of attitude, and then at the end, would you say that it's more difficult when it's such a mixed bag that way?
I think, to be perfectly honest, you just never know. This is a political process, and no matter who is in the governor's chair, bills that come through have political consequences. And, many of the bills that we brought in 2021 that had to do with something that's been important to me, which is housing, were vetoed. And when we brought those bills back in 2023, they were vetoed again. You do the best that you can. You try your best to look at what you did the previous session, to adjust legislation to hopefully be have people have more of an appetite to see your way. You do your work in the interim, you have conversations, you talk across the aisle, you talk to people on both sides of the issue, and then you do your best. But at the end of the day, as legislators, we know what our community is asking us for, and no matter who's sitting in the governor's chair, I believe we have a responsibility to present legislation that is going to benefit our communities in the North and in the South. Throughout the state of Nevada, we are representing human beings that have needs that are human, and we do the best we can. All we can do is hope that our voices are heard, that we have enough political pressure to get things done, and that we can work cohesively within the building, and then when we present something to the governor, that they will be open to passing it and signing it.
Moving on to the doula bill, which is something that Make It Work Nevada has had their hands in since the beginning, and it was very exciting to actually be able to pass that last session. For those who don't know, a doula is a birth worker, someone who assists someone who is in the midst of giving birth, pregnant, and then afterwards in the postpartum, that friend that helps guide you into motherhood in a lot of different ways. Not necessarily giving, they are not a midwife. They don't help you actually give birth, but they're by your side, which is really, really important. It helps people have someone there to advocate for you, especially in a time when maternal mortality is so high and people are just scared. Doulas are now able to accept Medicaid, so that Medicaid recipients are also able to have a doula. We did that. It was all said and done, and then we realized this is not enough money for doulas. So we came back this session to try to raise the reimbursement rate for doulas. So how did that go? How do you feel about it?
I am extremely happy. Make It Work Nevada and the Reno Doula Co-op worked hand in hand, like professional that they are, and really worked hard to get this through. We had a couple of fits and starts at the beginning. We thought there was some language that needed to be specific in the bill, and we're able to work with the Department of Health and Human Services to adjust the language, to give them the leeway that they needed to get us what we wanted, which was a reimbursement rate that is a living wage, with also a little extra stipend for those who serve moms in rural areas.
Which is also really important.
It's very important.
Because they can be left out of conversations.
They are often left out of conversations, and there is a nexus between the needs of people in rural communities as we see in urban communities. We have healthcare deserts. We have lack of healthcare professionals that are available to our community. And when we don't have those services, This is where people who are navigators like doulas can help our communities get through these life-changing experiences.
My name is Jollina Simpson. I am the policy and grant researcher for Make It Work Nevada. We looked across the nation at states actively reimbursing doulas. The average reimbursement for all of those states is $1,224 for 8 visits, which includes prenatal, postpartum, and the birth. The current Nevada reimbursement is $450 for 7 visits, which is well below the national average. The rate increase proposed takes into account Nevada's 6.2 increase in cost of living, the accurate calculations of the time spent with our clients delivering services. It also includes the fact that doulas are small business owners, subject to all the taxes and expenditures of a business, including our enrollment fees, continuing education, childcare for our children, and healthcare for our families. So I participated in drafting, in collaborating, and presenting the bill in session for the 82nd session. So it was my responsibility, along with our collaborators, the Doula Co-op of Reno and the Larson Institute, to craft a bill that represented the needs of doulas. So from the very beginning, I was part of the bill. I was sitting in the parking lot after a shepherd's breakfast, where I went there supporting and being present with Make It Work Nevada, and it was actually in my car after the shepherd's breakfast that I got to talk to Emily from the Doula Co-op, and then immediately reached out to Assemblywoman Summers-Armstrong, and that's where we started going from there, talking, and so much fun. It was so much fun preparing for this bill. Working collaboratively with our partners allowed us to really kind of stretch and be dynamic in front of the committee, and to really speak the case not only for the health benefits of the birthing person, but the benefits to doulas, small businesses, being able to protect birthing people in rural populations where they don't have access to immediate care, right? It was an amazing journey to go on. And at the very end, we were lucky enough to get a mom who had just delivered her baby within a couple of weeks to come on and talk about what it was like for her as a non-native English speaker, so English is like her third language. She is an immigrant, and she is a survivor of domestic violence. And so she was able to come on and tell her story about how her whole birth changed because her doulas, advocated for her. They gave her choices. They told her that there are other things that she could do. And it saved her, in her words, it saved her from a C-section.
Hi, my name is May. I'm a foreigner single mom without family support in the U.S. She is my first baby, which means I didn't have any labor experience before her. I got emergency Medicaid assistance based on my status. By chance, when I was 37 weeks pregnant, I met with the 2 doulas, Sue and Angela. They were willing to assist me with my labor. During the 37 hours labor, my OB/GYN would like to do Sincera section to have my baby. However, we have tried 36 hours to avoid it. My 2 doulas suggested alternate options, and my doctor chose to do a vacuum extraction, which worked, and my baby came to the world. Thanks for my doula being there with me, mentally and physically supporting me during the 37 hours of labor, and avoid the Sincera section from happening. Thank you.
So I'm proud that I was able to be a small part of what happened with the doula. Your team, Jollina and Make It Work Nevada and the Reno Doula Co-op, y'all the ones that did the hard work and the research and the PowerPoints. I was just a vessel to help, but it makes me so happy because I can say from the bottom of my heart, I was part of something amazing.
Jollina Simpson, for the record. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, May, for sharing your birth story. Madam Chair and members of the committee, this is the impact of doula work. May is a mother of a 10-day-old newborn, and she was willing to join us today to share her story and advocate for more doulas supporting Medicaid clients. That is powerful.
In closing, I'd just like to tell you all a little story. 1987, I was a young 25-year-old mom living very far away in a little town called Fisbeck, Germany, with my then military husband, and we were having our first child. My mother was not able to come from California to be in this small town to help me with the birth of my first child. And I was lucky enough to meet a woman, and her name was Frau Gisela Bussa. She was exactly what her name implies. She was a stocky, brown-haired German woman who was a midwife. She didn't speak very much English, but I tell you what she did. She loved on me. She helped me birth my first two sons, Brandon and Dexter, at the Kloppenburg Hospital. She was my lactation specialist. She was my birthing specialist. She was everything. And I could not have done what I did without medication if it had not been for Frau Bussa. The love that she gave me, and I mean it was love, is what the doulas that you've heard from today are offering women who are Medicaid recipients. I was a poor wife of a staff sergeant in the Air Force. We were barely making it. It cost me $120 for each of those births, and that included every visit to the doctor and all of the love and help that I got from Frau Bussa. It makes a difference how babies are born. It makes a difference how moms are treated during the prenatal portion and the postpartum. It makes a difference how that child comes into this world.
I mean, I think it's teamwork, right? Like, I think understanding that just having doulas also won't save every Black woman from dying, but it is a step, and it's awareness that people understand. So then we get to that next step of what is needed, and then whatever research we need to put into place, maybe at UNLV Medical School, or figuring out what exactly is causing those things. We're also, Jollina and I are both actually on the Maternal and Mortality Review Committee for the state, and we still have a long way to go there as well as in other states. Like, these are all really new committees that are being put together to hopefully combat some of these things. And there's some federal work being done around the Momnibus bill. And so I think people need to hear what's happening locally, know some stuff is happening locally in other states and federally, all at the same time. But if we're not doing it all at the same time, and we're not all pitching in and doing our part, then we're not helping solve the problem. Because I told some folks a long time ago that I didn't even realize just how detrimental it was, even though myself, my cousins, friends, we could sit around and basically talk war stories of giving birth. And we did so like it was normal, because it was normal to us to say, oh, well, this happened, my blood pressure dropped, or the baby's heart rate dropped, or emergency C-section, or all of these different things happen. People say I almost died, or, I was bleeding forever, or my placenta was attached wrong, or all of these things. And we're telling the stories like
the crisis is normal.
Exactly.
It's trauma.
Right. It's trauma, and we've normalized, because people just make it seem like having a child is traumatic, instead of saying, no, having a child should be a beautiful, yes, painful, but a beautiful experience of bringing, your baby into this world. And it should be done so in a place where you feel safe, where you feel heard, and where you have the care that you need, whether you give birth at home or in a hospital. But, so many things have happened that we don't even realize that, this isn't right. And so it was after I started doing this work that I really had an aha moment. I was like, holy crap. Like, I really want to go back and talk to some of my, former doctors and be like, y'all did not do me right at all. I didn't even know that what was happening was as wrong as what it is. And I think having a doula would have helped, but I didn't know what a doula was.
And
23
many
years
of us
ago.
did not. And
I think that at this moment, the thing that we can do as voters is to ensure that access to birth options is available to everybody. So, for instance, as a voter, maybe you don't know that we only have one birth center here in Las Vegas, just one. And so either as a voter, you can give birth at home, you can give birth in a birth center, or you can give birth in a hospital. And birth centers cannot thrive here because of pieces of legislation that should be changed and can be changed and has been being changed. So when we think about, okay, when you see something legislative out there about reproductive justice, if you see something legislative about doulas, midwives, birthing people, lactation, we need to be able to support the practitioners within the birth year. And I'm not just talking about the OB. Very few people are thinking about the birthing person when they go home, right? And that's the doula's job. There are many ways to create equity, to create balance, and a lot of those things can be done through policy, hospital policy, state hospital policy, Medicaid policy, insurance policy. As voters, we have the access to be able to change a lot of that in Nevada.
I knew what a midwife was because I had one for my first 2 births that happened in Germany. And I can honestly say that those were probably the 2 most amazing experiences that I had in childbirth. But it was a little different when I came to the States, which really brought this situation and my advocacy and my support for your advocacy to the fore, because I had my child, my 3rd child, Kieran, here locally, and it didn't turn out to be such a great situation. He ended up in under a heat lamp for 6 days because he was allowed to get hypothermia in the hospital. But I will say this, having a baby is traumatic to our bodies, so we can't pretend like it's going to be all joy and roses, albeit a little bit painful. But I think what we see in the Black community, what we see in just communities of color, and the need for the doulas in our rural communities, which, by the way, are full of people of Native descent, okay, who also are experiencing many of the things that we are seeing in our urban communities. People say, how can this be? Well, we have to go back to the Genesis to understand why we are in this situation. And I don't know if your folks, I'm sure they do, you have an intelligent and highly involved listenership. Many of the processes they have to do with OBGYN were practiced on African women, enslaved women, to even build this craft.
We talked about it on our podcast,
Yes.
American Dreams, Reproductive Justice. You can find it on Spotify.
Yes. They perfected the art, the practice of OBGYN on enslaved Black women.
Without pain medication.
Without pain medication, in some of the most horrible and inhumane ways. And so I believe there's a particular tenor in the medical field that needs to be addressed. And that tenor is the lack of listening to us, as seeing us as whole humans that feel pain. We've heard stories of people in hospitals asking for medication and being told that they didn't need it, that you're just being overdramatic. It doesn't even matter what your socioeconomic status is. We die in childbirth because we're not listened to more often than we should. And that is the reason why the doula is that navigator, that friend, that advocate that is necessary. And so for those of us who may be able to bring a loved one into the room who can advocate for us, good for us. But for those who cannot, this is why having a doula who is mostly women, need to be paid a living wage. The work of women is important, should be paid in a manner that is respectful to what we do and what we bring to our communities. And I am so proud of this bill. I am excited for what is to come. We want more doulas.
Yeah, this is a part of the care economy. When we talk about the care economy as a whole, Make It Work Nevada has been working on paid sick days, paid family leave, but also included that is child care,
Yes, ma'am.
elder care,
Yes.
and doulas are included because that is the foundation and backbone of our community. We can't do anything if we don't have people to care for ourselves and our loved ones while we are out doing these other jobs, because you have a lot of folks who have their parents who are aging, and you need folks that may need to help care for them while you are working, and you might need to work so that you can pay someone to help care for your parents and also for your children. Going daycare has always been super high. We've talked about it for years, that it's really more than the cost of going to UNLV for the first year, for the first 3 years of daycare. So from the time they are about, say, 6 months to 2 years old, that is about college tuition every year. And so who can afford that? We can barely afford
3 times.
Right, same. And you can barely afford college tuition when they get to that.
Sure.
Then the people are like, oh, you're going to find grants and scholarships, but no one thinks about that when you have a baby. Do you have any grants or scholarships for, kinder care? Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think if there's one thing that should get us enthusiastic about joining in with Make It Work and your colleagues in this space, just think about this. I used to be 15, 16, used to be 20. I'm looking 60 dead in the face here pretty soon. And one day I may be 80. If we are lucky enough to live, we will be in need of wonderful care from the care economy. And if we want those folks to care for us with dignity, with skill, and with love and grace, we had better set this system up so that we can be cared for. Because if we don't, we are not going to get what we need from that economy. And I don't know anyone that is going to want to sleep in a tent to come and take care of me.
Right. You won't get rolled over.
You're
That's
not
how
gonna
we end
get-
up. That's how you end up
Come
with
on,
bed sores.
Come on. And so these are critical issues. And if we just put ourselves and stop othering these issues, and I think that makes it easy for us to be non-empathetic when we think that it doesn't apply to us. But I would invite your listeners and anyone who is watching, you need to think about, put yourself in here, because if we live long enough, if we grow old enough, your day is coming, and you want someone who's going to care for me, my granddaughter, my daughter-in-law. If I can't be there for the next birth, if there is one, I want someone to be there to look out for her and care about her and navigate her through this and advocate for her. My granddaughter, if she chooses to have children, I want the same. As I get older, I want someone to care for me. And so if we want a society that's going to deliver this kind of thing, we have to work for it. We have to demand it. We have to advocate for it. And then we have to be prepared to pay for it. Nothing's free.
Not at all. That brings up another conversation, but I think we'll have to follow that up on another time. But it just made me think about maybe one of the reasons why we're struggling with getting folks to care about the care economy when we think about getting older is that no one wants to think about getting older.
You better start thinking about it, honey. You better start planning for it.
People are really trying to roll that clock back however possible, and we have to think that clock is not rolling back, and we have to think differently about
There
it.
are things that we can do to prepare ourselves to live better in our elder years. But my grandmother said to me, Grandma, oh God, Octavia Tofree, she says to me, you have 2 choices. You can die young or grow old.
Pick one.
Pick one.
Right, it's going to be what it's going to be.
And so it is what it is. And so at some point, our bodies they're going to break down. And so we have to be honest about that as a possibility and prepare. And there's no reason to be afraid of it.
Right.
We need to face it head on. And the care economy is part of that. So you putting money in your 401k, good for you. But if your 401k is not broad enough and deep enough to pay somebody to care for you, or you don't put money in your 401k and then you don't have anything to help someone pay for you, what are you going to do, right? So let's plan for the world that we want and the future that we want, and understand that it's going to cost. And it's also providing dignity for the person who's caring for us. Why do we make these, try to make these minimal positions? They're important.
They are.
And we should really respect and give full credence to the people who work in these fields.
Well, Shodnra Summers-Armstrong, Assemblywoman for District 6 in Las Vegas and a little bit of North Las Vegas.
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. As we have said before on this show, legislators are not paid a living wage either. So I am grateful that you still decide to do this work and show up every day for your constituents and those who are not even in your district, because this goes further and wider than just your district. So I'm grateful that you showed up today and always, and we look forward to having you again.
Thank you so much. And please, I beseech you to continue the work. We need you on our team.
And that's our show. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being a part of the Make It Make Sense family. Looking forward to seeing you at one of our social hours. Make It Work is always doing something fun, and we want to see you in our office. We want to see you online with My Body, My Authority. We want to see you at Let's Unpack That. We have so much stuff to do, and especially coming up in 2024. So we'll see you all soon. Thanks so much.